It's 6 p.m. Pardon me?
Very thank you.
Okay. I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting will be recorded for public viewing. And with that, do I have a motion to adopt this evening's agenda? So moved by Councillor Blina, seconded by Councillor Bryant. Questions to the motion? No questions, all in favor? Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Remind everyone there's conflict of interest forms up in the cabinet. If you have any conflict of interest, please declare them and pass it into the clerk. With that, I'll move on to item number 4, new business. Item 4.1, presentation of the 2025 municipal financial statements by Ernst & Young. I believe Lisa's going to come to the podium and Councillor Thorne's going to be so disappointed she's not here for the opening.
She'll be here. All right, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome. So I know that you probably didn't have a chance to go through the statements, I just got them today, so I will go through them and also I think tonight you don't approve them, so I have a few weeks to go over if ever there's any other question that you guys have afterwards, don't hesitate to reach out to Diana Roston, and I'm sure we can find the answers. So I'll go through the statements first, and then there's a little bit of audit things or that I'll have to address if you want to. So we audited your financial statements for the year end December 31st, 2025. So if you go to the audit report, which is on page 1 or page 3 of the PDF, it comes from that we have audited, and also we're planning to issue an unqualified opinion. And what that means is that you follow the accounting standards and that your accounting is all good. So I'm saying we're planning because we need to do auditing procedures up to the date of the audit report, and the auditor's report will be dated when you approve at the next, I think it's the next meeting.
Yeah, July 15th, I think. Seems like a long time, but it is our next meeting.
Yeah.
We can put the fund back in finance now.
Yeah, so I don't anticipate anything popping up in our last kind of cutoff procedures, but want to let the members of the council know. So another reminder, internally, the accounting that you use is fund accounting, and that's through the province of New Brunswick. That's how the municipalities have to do their accounting. The audited statements, we use the public sector accounting standards, PSAS that we call. So when we receive their accounting from the municipalities accounting, we need to do a lot of adjusting entries to bring it to PSAS, the public sector accounting. So you may notice that the profit or a lot of numbers could differ. Schedule or note 4 gives a good reconciliation of what we've adjusted, but just a reminder that these are under PSAS, your audited statements. So in terms of the statement of operations and accumulated surplus, so Salisbury's main revenue is the word of assessment or the property taxes, which was 7.136 million. And also in 2025, the sale of services, which are a bit higher, which is mainly sewer and recycling, close to your budget. The other revenue from own sources, that's the building permits, revenue from own sources was 452 for the year, much higher than what was budgeted. And the main increase was the building permits that was higher in 2025. And conditional grants, so the municipality received almost 2.5 million in grants in 2025. Under PSAS, if you receive capital asset grants, we show them as revenue. Under fund accounting, capital asset grants are not revenue. So this is where there's kind of a discrepancy in fund accounting versus PSAS. So your total revenue under PSAS are 10.8 millions, and it was 10.6 last year. And you had budgeted 7.9 million, and the reason that you're over budget is mainly the conditional grants or the capital asset grants that the municipality received. In terms of your expenses, so the schedules either L gives all the details into kind of a detailed breakdown as to what the expenses are. So your total expenses for 2025 was 7.6 million. The budget was 7.2, but in your budget, you don't account for the amortization of capital assets. So your audited statements would capitalize the assets and would amortize them annually as an expense. So that's why your actual expenses are higher than your what was budgeted. And compared to prior year, your expenses were 6.5. So a little bit increase in your total expenses, which generates a surplus under PSES of 3.1 million, and we're at 4 million prior year. So you have an accumulated surplus. You were starting the year at 16.2, so your accumulated surplus end of year is 19.4. So if we go to the next statement, which is statement of change in net debt, here it's a reconciliation of your net debt that we'll see on the balance sheet on the next page. So you're starting the year at almost 3.2 million. You bought or invested in capital assets for 8.1 million, and the main one was the fire hall that got completed in the year. And then we took some amortization for 864,000, so that makes a change in the net debt. You're of 4 million, your net debt beginning of year was 2.1 million, and the net debt end of year is 6.1. That we'll see on the next statement. So if you go in the statement of financial position, or also called a balance sheet, this is really a picture, December 31st, of your financial assets and your liabilities. So end of day, what did the municipality have as cash, receivables, and also what did it owed. So in terms of cash at the end of 2025, you're at 2.8 million in the bank, higher than 2024, but you had received a debenture throughout the year that was not utilized yet, so it explains the increase in cash. Your receivables were 1.3, same as pretty much prior year, and in your receivables, it also includes government grants that were earned but not received yet, and that was for 890,000. Your investments or term deposits, that's all for the reserves, 470,000, and then your accrued benefit assets. So that's the pension plan for the employees of the municipality, 59,000. So you had 4.7 million in financial assets, and you're at 2.9 the year before. If you look at your liabilities, you always have accounts payable, a little bit of deposits, some deferred revenue for grants received that was not utilized, you have to defer next year. And your long-term debt. So you'll notice that your long-term debt went up from 4.2 to 10.3 million. And the main is to finish financing the fire hall. And in that 10.3 million, you'll see note 10, the breakdown of all the debt. So if you take your financial assets at 4.7 million and we deduct the liabilities of 10.9, it gives your net debt of the 6.1 million. And this is a number we saw on the prior statement, or the statement of change in net debt. And then in terms of your non-financial assets, which are your capital assets, so all the assets that the municipality owns, you'll see it went up from 18.3 to 25.6 million. And as you saw on the prior page, you invested more than 8 million in a year. So it made your capital assets increase to 25 million. So if we take your net debt and we add all the value you have in your capital assets, it gives you an accumulated surplus of 19.4 million. And it was 16.2 prior year. Now, if we go to the operating statement of cash flow, so here is the statement that shows it's a reconciliation of your bank account really from the start of the year till the end of the year. So in terms of operations, under PSES, if you take your annual surplus and you exclude the expenses, that's not a cash disbursement. The municipality had 4 million in operating, it generated 4 million, I should say, in operating surplus or in cash. Now it's not all received, you have receivables payable, but annually over 12 months, that's how much surplus that just by operating that the municipality generates. And from that 4 million, you acquired capital assets of 8.1 million. And you receive some long-term debt of 6.3, then it's the quarter adjustments. So it makes your net change in cash of 1,675,000. And as we saw in this statement of financial position, you're at 1.1 million at the end of 2024, which brings you to 2.8 million at the end of 2025. Now, in terms of the notes, there is no new standard in 2025, so there are no changes in your accounting policies. Now, if we move to note 3, so note 3 gives a reconciliation of the budget, because the budget is always prepared under fund accounting. So we show which adjustments were made to bring it to PSES. Note 4 This is where we reconcile the annual surplus to your fund accounting. So this is a note that I find very interesting. So the municipality has 5 funds. So you have 2 capital fund, 1 general and 1 utility. You have 2 operating fund, your general operating and your utility operating fund, and your reserve. So if we look at your general operating fund, the surplus under PSAS is 1.3 million, but then we make adjustments. And the main one, there's the pension plan that's being taken out under fund accounting. Your previous year's surplus, so under fund accounting, you need to account for your surplus from 2 years ago if it was a surplus. That does not exist under PSAS, so we need to adjust that amount. The capital expenditures, under fund accounting, if your operating fund pays for capital expenditures, it's an expense. Under fund accounting, we capitalize, it's not an expense. So these are the amounts that were paid by your operating fund. So you'll see the general operating, you had an expense of 1.15 million that went to kind of finance the capital asset purchase, and your utility had 46,752. You repaid some long-term debt, so debt payments under fund accounting is an expense. It's not an expense under PSAS, so we adjusted that for a total of around 179. And then your reserve fund, so if you do transfers to the reserve, that's a fund accounting expense or revenue. So that gets eliminated under PSAS. And then the other transfers, 150,000, that's what the utility fund pays to the general operating for its use. So it's an internal transfer. So when you take into consideration these adjustments, you'll see that the general operating fund, so you generate a surplus of 259,628. So this will have to be carried in your budget in 2027.
Yeah.
And then your utility fund, operating had a loss, if you want, or a deficit of 32,350. And that too will have to be utilized within the next 5 years. So the other notes, and if I keep going, page 14, there's nothing there. Long-term debt, so note 10. So you'll see that your RBC loan went up, so that was to finance the fire hall. But I think that as of today, that's been paid off, and now it's through debentures with the province. So you're at 7.4 million at the end of December, and then you receive 1 debenture in 2025 for 1,820,000. So at the end of the year, you had 10.3 million in long-term debt, and then the principal repayments are shown below. Now, one thing that the municipalities like to look at is your fiscal service ratio. So if you look at your total budget of the year, it's nice to, municipalities need to look at how much from the budget goes to service the debt. So how much goes to pay off the principal and the interest annually. So your general fund had a budget of 7.8 million last year. Of the 7.8 million, the repayment of the debt and the interest was around 375,000. So it's around 4.7%. So 4.7% is the part of your budget that goes to pay off debt in the general fund. The sewer fund, which is a smaller budget, has a higher percentage. That one was 12% for 2025. If we compare to prior years, so your general fund in 2024 had a ratio of 2.46, and it was 2% in 2023. But you'll remember in 2025, you increased the debt quite a bit by over 5 or 6 million. So it impacts the ratio, but you're still at a very comfortable level. We always say you should never go above 15. That's kind of municipalities that are investing a lot. You can see it higher, 10, maybe 12. Some are lower. It just depends on the size and how much you're investing. But
The province raises a red flag when it gets to 20, so that's the,
20 is like if you, as I always say, if it's too low for too long, it can raise a flag too, because are you not investing enough and pushing the kind of debt to your future residents, the people that are not paying tax later on. So it's always prudent to make sure that you always invest. That doesn't matter when you live in Southbury, that your property tax stays the same, but you've always maintained. So those that kind of toot their horn, that have no debt and nothing, or maybe they're not investing and someone's gonna pay later on. So with the last 2 years, I see you've invested quite a bit. So And you have a nice fire hall flag. So it's good. So those are for the ratios, your borrowing compliance, your, note 12 is the pension plan note, I'm not gonna go through. We received the statements from the actuary, so we don't get into the notes. 13 is your tangible capital assets, so there's a breakdown of how much you've invested per category, so the detail is all listed there. Now, if we go to your reserve funds, so note 14 gives you a summary of your balance in your reserve funds. So just as a reminder, your capital reserve funds, there's no limit in how much you can put in. The operating reserve fund, you can only put up to 5% of prior year's budget. So if you look at your general operating reserve fund, if you take the 2025 budget times 5%, you're allowed to go to $394,000 for 2026. And for 2025, you were allowed 245,000, so you're below, so you're within the standards or the rules, I guess, how much you can put in the operating funds. So in total capital and operating reserve, you're at 1.7 million at the end of 2025. So it decreased from prior year because you transferred 395,000 was used. Disclose all the resolutions for the reserve funds. And other than that, if you go to page maybe note 15, you have your prior year surplus or deficit. This is for the utility fund. The utility fund, we need to show the detail per year. So they're listed in note 15. Note 18, which is page 28, or maybe more in your PDF, is a segment information. So maybe just a few numbers that I find are that I like to look at annually. So here's where you can see your total salaries and benefits for the year. Because if you look in the schedule, your municipalities kind of record expenses differently, where salaries can be in like 6 different schedules. But note 18 or the segment information note discloses the total for the year per different categories of expense. So if you go at the bottom, you see expense, salaries and benefits, and then you go way at the end, 2025 total. So your total payroll cost, I guess for 2025 was 1.38 million, and you're at 1.306 a year before. So pretty consistent for total salaries. And then the other expenses, which are good in service, your amortization that we already saw was 864, and then interest on debt. So the total interest you paid on the debt in 2025 was 252,000, and it was 83 the year before. But last year it started RBC loan to finance the fire hall, and this year it kept going up, so interest went up accordingly. And then the other schedules give just more details on the all the expenses with the budget numbers also shown. Maybe schedule D are the grants that you've received throughout the year. So here the financial statements gives a breakdown of the grants that was received, if it's for operating or capital. So you'll see the capital grants received were 2.4 million in 2025. So now in terms of financing, so as I've mentioned, the municipality invested 8.1 million in capital assets. So it got financed, 4.1 million came from BMO loan, the short-term financing. You received government grants for 2.4. You took funds from the reserve for 295,000, as we saw, and then the operating funds covered the balance of 1.2 million. So that's how you finance your capital assets in 2025. So is there any questions on the statements?
We have a recommendation to refer it to committee and then.
Yeah.
So do I have a motion?
I move it. Go ahead and read it out.
Yeah.
I move that council accept the draft financial statement presentation and direct staff to bring forward to official audited statements for ratification at the July regular council meeting.
Moved by Councillor Glenn, seconded by Councillor Bannister. Questions to the motion?
I'm so sorry I ask this question every year, but we're gonna pretend that it's for the new counselors and not to remind me, what's going on. Reserve funds in note 14. I don't remember the due from transactions. Can you explain those again? Like, there's amounts due from the general operating fund and due from the utility operating fund. What is it again?
It's just that the cash has not been transferred like in a term deposit or in the reserve fund bank account.
It's there, it's just not in the bank account.
Yes,
Okay,
not in the reserve fund bank account.
okay, but we
They're in
have,
terms, right? Like they're all, yeah.
so they're not part of the investments though,
No.
because the investments are GICs.
Yes.
These are different.
Yes.
Okay. Yep, I ask that every year, thank you.
Do you? I don't think so.
I feel like I ask it in my own work location,
We
actually.
have leads in a few different meetings. So.
Perhaps I ask her in a different setting. But, okay.
Additional questions?
For the all in favor, I just want to say thank you to your team. Kadin and Mamadou, I think, did most of the heavy lifting this year. So we appreciate the promptness of it. And we joked at our well, you were on that one. We joked and said that they go to the last wire to get things done to make sure they meet the deadline. So we know that we'll get the many requests from them at any time of day. So we appreciate them kind of getting it done today for the meeting and for the back and forth of the last couple of months. So please pass that along for us.
Well, thank you too. Like I say, we had good cooperation. There's, like I say, it's always a lot of adjustments to bring it to pieces. And I know you had just transitioned like fund account to 5 funds this year. So there was more like things. So I issued a recommendation letter. So Diane will probably discuss it at a later date. But as a whole, the accounting is done okay. It's just to bring it now that you've started the fund, it's just to tweak it a little bit further for next year. And other than that, like I said, and a few kind of housekeeping that I need to advise council. So when we do an audit, we need to set materiality for the municipality. So it's pretty consistent year over year. We take 3% of revenue. So this year it gave around $225,000. And what that means is we cannot accept an error greater than that amount that would not have been adjusted. If so, I could not give an unqualified opinion, or EY could not. And this year we adjusted everything, so there's no unadjusted differences. So we just adjusted everything, so there's nothing not adjusted. And I confirm that EY is independent. And yeah, no, I did.
Emma?
That's it for the.
Thank you very much. So all in favor? Contrary minded, we have direction for the next council meeting to.
Thank you.
Thank you as always. Glad to get you out of here early to enjoy the sunshine and your family.
There you go, thanks.
Thank you very much.
I'm starting to understand that.
Isn't it fun? Finance is fun, you guys.
I wouldn't go so far.
Yeah.
On finance committees with Councilor Thorne, and I love it. All right, we're gonna move on to item 4.2, trail name direction.
Perfect. Okay, so as council knows, and just got a tour out for a new segment or a new portion, we've been working on our trail network over the last few years. This year will mark kind of the completion of that kind of core long-term trail plan. And so with that, we're getting ready to install the interpretive signage, or the wayfinding signage, I should say. And then in doing that, we realized that we never officially named the trails. So last year, we went out and asked residents their opinion or preferences on the trail name. At that time, the only connection was the Braemar, what we called the Braemar to Parkin Street Trail, because that's what we called it during the tendering process when we first built it. So that's what it's been unofficially called. The main piece is that, and the reason we're bringing for council direction is just because, given the fact that it's a bit of a marketing tool, basically. So this will be on our printed maps, on our trail maps, and we would start referring to the trail accordingly. So we're recommending going with the basically top 2 names that residents chose in that survey. with one being along the kind of Braemar to Parkin Street Trail section. And then the second piece going for the trail portion that's being constructed this year that council just saw in the tour. So we're recommending those two top names. There's a number of alternatives in the memo should council choose. Municipalities do it differently depending on where you are. Some name them by color, some name all of the trailheads and all the connections to Main Street. Some don't name them at all. We definitely don't recommend that. We'd like to use some sort of name, but we're looking for council direction accordingly. So with that, there's a recommendation on the floor, and then we can answer any questions that council may have.
Would the council approve the proposed trail names as voted on by the residents in 2025 being Riverside Trail and Heritage Trail? And direct staff to continue wayfinding signage installation and target future installation of interpretive signage.
Moved by Councillor Bannister, seconded by Councillor Neil. Questions to the motion? Get you in next time, Councillor.
It's fine.
I have a question. I'm just looking at the names and in my head, I can make an easier connection to Heritage on the other trail. Because you have the cemeteries there.
That was mine too.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
I agree.
No, that was mine too, and this, they're closer to the river. And
I know you, yeah.
Yeah, so personally, I agree, and I joke because we had that conversation internally. We can definitely proceed with that if council wants. The rationale, what we ended up with was that when we went out to, market, when we went out to residents to ask for their input, because the Braemar Park Trail was specifically that was the only section that was built, so the survey explicitly said the Braemar to Parkin Street connection. There's definitely a number of heritage pieces that are there. Both, you could say, kind of follow the river, but there's definitely more heritage pieces there. But ultimately, we went with what the survey said for that reason alone. So, but we did have many discussions internally as to whether or not we should swap the recommendation. So we can do that should council choose, but that's the rationale for why it's there.
Are there ways we can tie the other one into Heritage to specific spots, or that we can put that in terms of sign up to say this?
For sure, yeah, and the interpretive signs can go anywhere, really, well, unless the easements don't allow us, I guess, but in principle, they can go anywheres, and it's not like we won't put anything that's heritage related on the trail just because it's not called Heritage Trail. There's definitely still an opportunity for that. It's just, it would give us a more intentional kind of element on that, whatever section is called Heritage Trail, to be a bit more direct on the heritage focus. The others might have, like what's at Highland Park now about species of birds or like nature, that kind of thing. Like there may be less of that, more on the heritage side of things on whatever section's called heritage, but we can still put some at the cemetery and those different places along the former Braemar Park Trail.
Would it be wrong for us to just swap them, even though that's not what the people voted for? But now that we have more information in a new segment, like it makes more sense for us to use what we know, maybe, and swap them?
We couldn't even remember, we had to go look at the survey to see if we asked for the full piece or not. So my personal opinion is that we're going with the top two options.
Yeah.
So that's the piece that we would say. It's definitely want to bring it to council.
I would swap
It's
them
a-
myself.
It's a,
Would you confirm for me that we're talking about Riverside Trail is proposed now for between Braemar and Parkin?
Yeah.
And the trail that we've just viewed now is Heritage.
right.
Well, then, if that is the case, then I would also say that I would be in favor of having those two swapped. And my point would be back to my workplace again, is that that's going to give a lot of support to what we're doing now with our students, and it would give them a chance to be able to incorporate what we're doing there and their.
I think because
that
the other
trail.
trail wasn't built at the time, I think in fairness, if it had been built, it would have
We
been.
would have explained.
It would have been explained in the survey, it would have been very evident, and I think because we're using both top two picks, I don't think there's an issue.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the wording of the recommendation, just to be safe, I'm gonna do my infamous look at Diane to see if we can call this a friendly amendment. The motion does not, we'll still need unanimous approval, but the motion does not specifically say which one is which, so as long as there's unanimous approval, we can swap them. So that instead of as proposed, it would be Heritage from Braemar to Parkin, Riverside for the section we just toured. So, but we would still need unanimous.
Councillor McNeil.
Is the cemetery the only heritage piece on the Braemar to Parkin?
There will be some more along the historical uses of the land. So like that used to be farmed land. When the sewer was put in, there was kind of some references to what used to be there. When you get to Parkin Street specifically, so the cemetery is there with some Parkin relatives. But that's designated in the historic places database or registry. I don't know what it's called. And then we'd probably be able to add some content when the school eventually goes there too. So I'm spitballing, like we have not had this conversation. We haven't figured out what interpretive signs will go, what we'll want to talk about, but the other piece that we had mentioned is like initially we were thinking of names, was one of the signs we want to make sure goes towards the fact that in 2023 we won the participation prize too, because that prize money went towards that first piece too. So those were things that we kind of spitball. Most of it was agriculture related or the Parkin Street area cemetery included pieces. So yeah, which can still go at the other locations. But that's as far as we've gotten in those discussions.
Councillor Glenn.
Yeah, how many respondents did we have to that survey?
107, it says on this the little
There you go.
diagram.
107.
I was looking at that as well.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even see that. I wasn't even looking.
And vice versa, would we all be in favor of swapping those? Everybody show of hands.
I don't think I care enough to.
I'm
read it,
indifferent,
but-
I mean, to be honest with you.
So then in that case, we'd be comfortable with the friendly amendment.
You've been given
given.
your, so, okay, so with that friendly amendment, do we have any additional questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, you're giving your direction. Perfect. Then moving on to item 4.3, Community Days Parade.
Okay, so the next item, we're looking for council direction as well. For returning councilors, you'll remember that I want to say early this year, / late last year, we brought forward a request we started the conversation around levels of service. And during those conversations, which there were multiple, council was clear that, in particular with events and measuring the success and the return, I would say, on events, that council wanted to have an opportunity or a mechanism to provide direction as needed. We're looking for that direction with communities specifically. So ultimately, the recommendation is that we no longer proceed with the parade portion of the Community Days programming. A few historical pieces is that its communities in general has significant historical significance and sentimental value to many residents and visitors. It doesn't mean that the program cannot evolve. So over the last few years, it has continued to evolve in many different ways. In 2024, we undertook a resurfacing project on Main Street and there was no parade that particular year. So we anticipate that we'll get a similar reaction and some residents will express concern. Hence why we're looking for council direction to make sure that that's ultimately the direction that the municipality wants to go in. The difference this year in general recently is the amount of registrants. So we get about a handful that register in advance. We have others that show up on the day of, but it's very difficult to plan logistically and make sure that there's a return from a volunteer time and logistics perspective when it comes to the parade. And the easiest, just to compare apples to apples or apples to oranges, maybe not the exact same, is around Christmas time. We have the Christmas parade, which sees significant more pre-registration and significant more crowds as well. So ultimately, we're recommending that we continue that evolution of the program and no longer proceed with the parade, but are available, and Katie's here as well for any questions in terms of seeking that direction from council. So there is a recommendation on the floor, and then we can answer any questions that council may have.
I'll move that, Salisbury Town Council direct the Salisbury Community Days Committee to terminate the Community Days Parade.
So moved by Councillor Thorne,
I'll second it.
seconded by Councillor Glenn. Questions? Councillor Glenn.
I just wanted to say, great council report form, to you guys. I have worked at the parade lineup for this parade for 20 years, and it is a completely different parade today than it was 20 years ago, where now you could have tumbleweeds rolling through the registrants. Because it's just not, the excitement isn't there, the excitement has shifted to the Christmas parade. And so I think that that's just like an evolution, like, Austin had said. So I think doing away with this parade and putting our focus over to the park for community days is a great step forward for us. And then now that the Christmas parade is here, like, that's the parade that we can put our effort into. People are excited about it. You're not dealing with summer holidays. You're not dealing with like, how do we decorate? Because there's a theme at Christmas time. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents on this.
Thank you.
I think too, like, the Christmas parade, your focus on the parade, where community days is just another activity in a whole.
Yeah.
In a whole plan.
So I have 2 things. I mean, observing the year that Main Street was being done. When we did the events afterwards, the turnout was very low. When we brought back the parade, despite there being very few participants, the participation afterwards was huge. So it does bring people out. So I would just say to the committee, we've got to figure out ways to ensure that we get people to know that there are events afterwards, because if council does choose to do that, because there was a noticeable difference in the 2 events on people, the crowds being there. I would also recommend, maybe not for this year, because we don't have a business association yet in this community, but if a business association wanted to look at something and come back to council and something they would drive and run, because you are right, I think we only had 2, maybe 3 floats in the parade last year. I do
Pre-registered, yeah.
Pre-registered. I'm not sure how many were in it. I do know one of those floats is not going to be in it this year because the participants have indicated they're just too busy, and that time of year is very difficult for them. So, that would be my only thing, would be that, if we make this decision, if the business community or the residents are that passionate about it, there has to be participants in the parade.
I wouldn't be against canceling the parade, but I strongly think we have to find something to replace that with. As I say, it drags people in town, but I don't know if we instruct the committee or staff, or, but there's gotta be something in that spot that brings people in and.
That was my
pick
point,
up.
because there's a noticeable
Yeah.
difference between the 2.
It doesn't have to be a parade, but
To Councillor Thorne's part, the communities just evolved so much over the different years, and whatever that is, there used to be a fair here during it as well, but that disappeared. Councillor Clinton.
Me? Oh, no, you, it's you.
Yeah, no, I thought he recognized you first. Just in thinking, there doesn't need to be any discussion on it, but Community Days has evolved, as has our community. And so thinking about that, we have several new families who are in the area with new experiences themselves and new cultures.
Yeah.
And being Community Days, I would like to see that be pursued, that we would have people who would be able to put something together perhaps at the park that helped build us a new sense of community, who they are, where they've come from. Perhaps there are people who would be vendors in some kind of an area, or food or something like that, that may, you know, over the number of years be something that maybe we could work towards, and that would be a culmination of our community days with our community members and the new participants in the community.
Katie, do you maybe want to come and explain some of the things that are gonna happen at the park?
I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
We do have a couple tentative plans, and it all depends on whether we decide to terminate the parade, because nothing can be confirmed unless we're confirmed that we are gonna be taking place in the park. Right now, we've earmarked and kind of booked tentatively, water walkers and a foam pit. For those of you who don't know what a water walker is, if you've ever seen those big inflatable balls that you can climb into and then walk on a pool of water, that was kind of our tentative draw for the younger kind of families that want to come in. I think the parade was a big draw for those younger families. So our replacement or anything that we want to do, tentatively being the foam pit and water walkers, is catered a little bit more towards that younger demographic. And then also, if we are at the park, we have the amphitheater to bring in live music and different vendors, and we're hoping to make it more of a market scene rather than just an activity kind of thing.
One of the other challenges, I think logistically, is that there's other large regional events that happen same weekend. We have the same challenge. with food trucks. So Kanazoo happens in town and the flea market happens in Sussex. So, it's a challenging time. So in general, to get certain kind of vendors and groups. So, I think we have those on like penciled in, reserved, pending this direction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's fair, because I think historically when people talk about, well, it used to be huge, in fairness, sometimes the parades don't used to be huge, or in September, that's when communities used to be as well. So that's not always apples to apples.
Can I add one more thing? I just think that if we terminate the parade, by moving the location to the park, that creates a different type of buzz. So I think while we're worried about people not like coming down to hang out here because there's no parade, I think because you're moving it to the park and you're changing it completely, that's gonna attract people to come to it. So I'm not worried about the crowd. Personally.
Well, any event we have at the Highland Park is a good turnout.
Exactly, yeah.
I think the addition of the parking spaces and now the Baptist church also being another
Yeah.
connector is a great motivator to get a little walk in and then arrive yourself. So it's
So what if we
always
had a shuttle?
accessible. You're not wrong. A shuttle would be excellent.
I think it's just important around key messaging. That
100%.
Council does make this decision, we ought to be unified, we have to make sure the key messaging around what we're trying to do, we'll do lessons learned, obviously, at the end of it. But it is a learning experience trying to grow the event. Try to cater to, as Councilor Cote said, sometimes newer individuals as well, to try to broaden the reach.
And I think the reality is that we'll have some folks who are concerned with this and that's understandable and I think our responsibility and the rationale for our recommendation is that we look at a number of different things. Look at the fact that our calendar of events has significantly changed and evolved throughout the year. We look at the attendance, we look at the return for the amount of logistics that go into an event like this. So all of those things are things that some people may not have a true appreciation for. And I think over the last couple of years, they've also, including in 2024 when the parade didn't happen, we were very clear that in some of our messaging that if people expect to have these things, they need to step up and get involved in them.
I'd also ask council or staff if they could just to check with, I do know St. Stephen as an example. They've also looked at the exact same circumstances where their committees have basically been begging people to sign up and not getting the signups. And at the end of the day, quite frankly, it's embarrassing as well for even last year in the parade, there was only a couple of floats. And I mean, the kids don't care, but it is kind of, once the people come out, there's only 3 or 4 floats. It's not a true reflection that Christmas time there's 60.
Did the people come out though? How do we have attendance?
That's the key. That's just it, Glenn. And that's council. We have to make sure people come out the year before because the Main Street, we had 0 attendance, obviously. And the people come to that.
But last year, was there people, I wasn't at the parade, was there people watching?
Yeah. It was lined up.
Not as many.
And then,
No.
Yeah,
the events
definitely.
after were lined up, right?
We had to be a little bit strategic with
It was 35 degrees. It was and we had the dunk tanks, in the parking lot here that, this area was jammed afterwards for 4 hours, right? I know, because I was in the dunk tank with some other people. Forgot their swimsuits.
Pending council direction, sorry, just on your piece on like messaging, our intent would be that we would release something this week. Pending council direction, and we would keep council posted on any input.
And I would just state if a business association did form, if that group felt they could do something, they could next year come back to council with a recommendation to drive it. I am cognizant the volunteers here work really hard to drive that. I've listened, I've heard that. But and this is one of the reasons we need a business association as well. If they feel that it's conducive for them to drive something like that, then it would be a good thing for them to spirit. That and many things that they can do.
I think messaging, like making sure that people are aware that Community Days is an event, not the parade. Like the parade is not the event. Like, we're not canceling Community Days. We're changing the programming of Community Days. We're evolving.
Seeing no additional questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Moving on to item 4.4. Regional Service Commission update, that's me, very small, in the upcoming WAG, there'll be some stuff sent out by the office on some things happening at the Service Commission. We do have a group getting together of the board next on the 30th, for an overview and a board working session, so we'll have more after that, but there'll be some additional information in the WAG that's going to for that all of the returning and new board members are receiving, so maybe we can go through that.
More orientation reading.
Yes, more information. For sure. With that, we'll move on to item number 5, mayor and councillor statements, inquiries. Just really only, congratulations to our graduates and a good job by our school administration on that, and kudos to them. Anything by our councillors that they would like to bring up? Seeing nothing, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Move by councillor Elias.
6:45.
We are adjourned.